So, you think you know what war looks like? Think again. We're going to dive into some really fascinating source material today that argues the new battlefields, well, they're not what you'd expect. They're inside a country's own systems, its values, even its institutions.
I mean, check out this quote from one of our sources. A superior and far more potent strategy has emerged to compel the target nation to attack itself. Whoa, that really hits you, right? The idea here is that the smartest way to win a conflict isn't to send in tanks, it's to get your adversary's society to just unravel from the inside.
And that brings us to this key idea for today's explainer: philosophical warfare. According to the analysis, it's all about targeting a nation's belief in itself. You chip away at the trust people have in their own government, their economy, their entire way of life, until the whole system just looks broken and corrupt.
Okay, so how does this philosophical warfare stuff actually play out in the real world? Well, our sources lay out three pretty wild and very different case studies. Let's start with a name that I guarantee you'll recognize.
All right, first up, what the source calls the Tesla vector. Now, we all think of Tesla as a car company, right? An innovator. But this analysis frames it very differently, as a potential strategic asset in a whole new kind of economic fight. So look at this breakdown. It's really this idea of two competing narratives. On one side, you have the classic American myth, right? The heroic capitalist innovator changing the world. But the source material argues that this exact image, this archetype, was deliberately co-opted, that it was turned into a kind of Trojan horse. And the analysis even puts it on a timeline, this alleged cultivation. It starts back in 1999 with the PayPal boardroom coup. They call this a capture window, a moment of, psychological vulnerability. Then fast forward to 2009. Daimler's investment is labeled the activation, basically a bailout that saved a bankrupt Tesla. After that, you get this period of just insane valuation inflation. And then finally, what the source calls the flip, where the public persona shifts and starts to inject a little chaos. Okay, and this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. The source is basically saying that the Gigafactory Shanghai deal was not your typical business expansion. It was a strategic move to create deep, deep dependency. Think about it. Unprecedented regulatory approvals, huge state-backed loans, and a supply chain where pretty much everything is sourced locally. The argument is that this created massive leverage over a key American industrial company. Okay, so we've looked at high tech. Now let's switch gears completely and talk about social welfare. We're heading to Indonesia, where a massive free meals program gives us another really stark example of a system being turned on itself. It's a shift from exploiting the value of capitalist innovation to exploiting the public's trust in government aid. And, on paper, the ambition here was just incredible. I mean, providing free, nutritious meals to nearly 83 million people, kids, pregnant mothers, it was supposed to be this amazing, historic social program. But the reality? It was a total public health catastrophe. In just the first year, according to the source material, you had widespread food poisoning outbreaks linked directly to the program. Over 9,000 people got sick.
So what on earth went wrong? Well, the investigation points to what it calls a recipe for failure. It was a perfect storm, really. The program launched in a legal void, no clear rules. Corruption was apparently everywhere. Embezzlement, officials allegedly colluding to buy cheap, spoiled ingredients. And the whole thing was rushed. They prioritized speed over safety, and even had the military and police running logistics, which crowded out the local businesses.
And this table really just maps out how the whole system failed. You had the central agency admitting it was negligent, the local kitchens were committing fraud, the anti-graft agency was flagging all these problems, and even at the top, the leadership was apparently downplaying the crisis. So every single level of governance was involved. It turned a program designed to help people into one that was actively harming them. All right, for our last case study, we're going digital. The source material uses this really chilling intelligence term, Project Benevolent Cage, to describe the creation of a powerful new kind of control grid. This is where the battlefield literally becomes the architecture of our modern digital lives. So what is Project Benevolent Cage? Well, according to this analysis, it's a framework for digital identity that goes way beyond just convenience. It's about fusing state power, corporate tech, and big finance into one single interconnected system, a system built for strategic control. And when you look at who's building this thing, it's a really interesting mix. You've got founders who cut their teeth in the online gambling industry, people who are experts in scalable identity verification. You've got Silicon Valley fintech gurus from places like Square. Then you have the big banks like HSBC and Lloyd's pouring in tens of millions in funding. And all of this is built on a market created by the government's own mandates. And the source lays out this really clear three-step process for how it all comes together. Step 1, the state creates the demand by requiring new digital ID schemes. Step 2, big finance jumps in with a ton of cash, creating this powerful finance tech lobby. And then step 3, the tech companies swoop in with the sophisticated platforms to make it all happen. It's this perfect alignment of interests that basically builds the cage before most people even realize what's happening. Okay, so let's take a step back. We've got a weaponized innovator, a social program that collapsed into a disaster, and a digital control grid. 3 totally different stories, right? So what's the connection? Let's connect the dots. Really, what is the common thread here? How does a car company in the US, a food program in Indonesia, and a digital ID system in the UK, how do they all fit into this new model of warfare? Well, the analysis points to a clear playbook. First, you take a system's core values, like American innovation or social welfare, and you exploit them. You operate in those legal gray zones where nobody's really watching. And the result? You erode public trust from the inside out. The ultimate goal isn't to conquer a country with an army. It's to engineer chaos and make their own system look totally broken. But it's not just about big corporations or government programs. The sources suggest that these strategic vectors can also operate on a much more personal, human level. Just take a look at this timeline for Anna Malova, for instance. It documents her proximity to some very powerful people at some very key moments. Moving into Trump Tower, being appointed Miss Russia in an event that was described at the time as an anomaly, and flying on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet. Now, the source presents this as a notable pattern of association. It's an illustration of how influence can potentially be exerted on a personal level, subtly shaping things behind the scenes. So, here's the big takeaway. The crucial point from all of this analysis we've explored today is that these hidden conflicts, they're not being fought on some distant battlefield. They're being fought right here, through the systems we use and trust every single day. The financial markets, social programs, the digital platforms we're all on. And that leaves us with one final and kind of challenging question. If this analysis is on the right track, what other hidden battlefields are shaping our world right now in ways we might not even see?